Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I am Gambhir. On the 16th of September, a 22-year-old Kurdish woman died at a hospital in Tehran. Her name was Mahsa Amini, a law-abiding Iranian citizen who steered clear of politics and minded her own business. But little did she know that she would pay a heavy price for not paying enough attention to her clothing. 3 days earlier, on the 13th of September, Amini was arrested by Iran's morality police. What is that? A force that is tasked with enforcing Iran's dress code. They detained Amini for not covering her hair properly with a headscarf, as is the custom in the Islamic Republic. So how did she die? Now that depends on who you ask. Iranian officials say she died of a heart attack, but her family claims her death was due to torture. They say she was beaten up in custody and went into a coma and died. Given the level of state secrecy in Iran, it's hard to verify the exact cause of the death. But what is no secret is the anger on the ground. These demonstrations have engulfed Iran courtesy Mahsa Amini. Her death has become a rallying point for thousands of Iranian women who are fed up with the clerics telling them what to wear. They have hit the streets. They are chopping their hair and burning their headscarves in solidarity with Mahsa Amini, a defiant act of resistance against Iran's strict rules on attire, also against those who are tasked with enforcing this. The first protest came on the 17th of September in the city of Sagiz, where Amini was buried. And from here, the protest quickly spread to other cities, namely Isfahan, Chabahar, Sanandaj, Rasht, Shiraz, Tabriz, and Tehran. Last we checked, tens of thousands of people were protesting in over 40 cities. The protests take place nearly every day, with women setting their hijabs on fire and Iranian police beating them up with batons. And let me remind you here, this is not just an intellectual movement, a protest by so-called rich and influential Iranians who can afford to get away with the state's heavy-handedness. No. This has become a grassroots level movement with peoples from all backgrounds, classes, castes protesting together, notwithstanding the consequences. And why just Iran? The protests have gone global, with Iranian expats protesting in cities like Istanbul, Athens, Madrid, Berlin, Paris, Brussels, London, New York. Let's talk about Greece, for example. A Molotov cocktail was hurled at the Iranian embassy in Athens last week. In England, a similar violent street demonstration reported outside the Iranian embassy in London. And in France, over 4,000 people were seen outside Tehran's embassy in Paris, and this forced the police to employ anti-riot tactics. Globally, these protests are unfolding without much consequence. But back in Iran, the people are being made to pay a heavy price with their lives. According to an Iranian rights group, over 76 protesters have been killed by the Iranian security forces in the last 11 days of the unrest in over 14 Iranian provinces. 76 deaths, 14 provinces, 11 days. And this figure includes 6 women and 4 children. Besides this, over 1,200 people have also been arrested, most of them being journalists, activists, academics. The crackdown is severe, and why would it not be? This is by far the most serious challenge that Iran's leadership has faced in years. Yes, there have been protests in the past, but the public dissent this time is unprecedented. Thousands of Iranians are risking their lives, braving batons, tear gas with open defiance against the leaders who appear to have no answers. So just what explains this? Are these protests just about the hijab, or is there more to them? Now, to be honest, these protests may be centered around the hijab, but they are also due to the rigid religious rules and a generation of gender-based discrimination. Ever since the Islamic Revolution of 1979, clerics in Iran have policed women's lives and their bodies, from what they do to what they wear to how they behave. The state enforces these laws through the Gasht-e-Irshad, that is Iran's morality police, tasked with ensuring that Islamic morals are being followed through heavy-handed tactics like fines, imprisonment, physical abuse as punishment for non-compliance. The targets of this morality police are mostly women, as Iranian men get away with wearing whatever they want to. So here's a reality check for them, a reminder on what the hijab is really supposed to be. To start with, the word appears at least 8 times in the Quran. Each reference denotes a barrier, a partition, or a curtain. Each reference says the concept is spiritual, not just sartorial, and the concept is applicable to not just men but women as well. Scholars say the general idea behind the hijab is that all Muslims should behave modestly, dress decently, cover their private parts, and avoid sexual exploration irrespective of their gender. But a vast majority of Muslims believe that these rules apply only to women. This misunderstanding largely stems from patriarchy, and Iran is a classic example of this. All its rules and laws around women's clothing are dictated by individuals who always happen to be male. Scholars, clerics, priests, politicians, only men. They cherry-pick Islamic verses to suit their narrative. The enormous mass public demonstrations stem from such discrimination. Yes, they are aimed at the hijab, but they're also aimed at other stringent laws for women. You see, the hijab is just one of the several draconian rules for women. There are a host of others. Courtesy, patriarchy. Consider the minimum age for marriage. It's disturbing. At one point, it was 9 years for girls. Right now, it stands at 13. Plus, an Iranian woman can only get married with official permission from her family's patriarch. Iranian men, on the other hand, can marry 4 times without seeking any permission. And then we have laws on divorce. An Iranian woman can divorce her husband only with the help of a cleric or a court, and that too only on certain grounds, like if the spouse is mentally unstable or remains intoxicated or is serving a jail term. Iranian men, on the other hand, do not face any such restrictions. They don't need third-party intervention for divorce. They have the liberty of getting a divorce even by pronouncing it verbally, or what's called the triple talaq. And then we have inheritance laws. If an Iranian woman dies, her property is transferred to her husband. But if the husband dies, his widow is entitled to only 1/8 of the share, 1/8. Plus, in the case of inheritance for children, the son gets twice the share of the father's property as compared to the daughter. Now, these were just some laws and restrictions. There are many more, but you get the point here. This free pass for men, but the chokehold on a woman's autonomy is appalling. It has triggered a debate across the world. All sorts of parallels are being drawn in this debate. Parallels between the liberties enjoyed by women in other parts of the world to the archaic rules and regulations that Iranian women are subjected to. In India as well, Iran's anti-hijab protests have been widely discussed. Remember the recent instances of some schools in an Indian state asking girls to not don the hijab? Essentially, these are two sides of the same coin. At the end of the day, both happen to be a case of women being told what to do and what not to do. What's happening in Iran is a protest against this patriarchal mindset. Yes, it is about the hijab, but it's also about the state dictating personal lives. The clerics who sit in positions of power controlling the women. My point is simple. Some want to wear the hijab, some do not. Some consider it to be their identity, while some do not. Some don it in the name of religion, some wear it because it's a part of their culture. But you know what's the common thread running through all of these scenarios? The basic freedom for women to make that decision for themselves, instead of being told what to do, what not to do, what to wear, what not to wear. Having the woman decide based on what she wants, and let's not call it allowing women to decide or letting the woman decide, because that in itself makes it sound like women are not in control. So whatever be the case, the decision to make this choice should be left entirely to women, not to clerics and politicians and the men in power.